Hi. February chewed me up and spit me back out. I was sick for about 2 weeks, which is half of the month. More than half because February is a shorter month. So that really took me out. And I don't know if you can tell, but I still have a lingering cough and I'm still congested because guess what? On top of all that, my seasonal allergies started to kick in. So that's great. All of that to say, in February, I didn't read as much as I usually do. I only read 12 books, which I know is still a lot compared to the average that everyone reads. But for me, that was the lowest amount of books I've read in a month in years. I think in 3 years, maybe. I will say February wasn't a great reading month. It was a good reading month. I read some fabulous, fantastic books, but I didn't find any 5-star reads. I didn't read anything that was life-changing or revolutionary for me, but I still read a good amount of books. So let's go talk about all of the books that I read in February. We'll start off with stats. Like I said, I read 12 books. For page number, 33% of the books I read were 300 pages and under. 67% of the books I read were 300 to 499 pages. I didn't read any big books in February, no books over 500 pages this month. My brain simply couldn't comprehend anything. Genuinely, I had a brain fog for the entire month of February, so there was no way I could read anything more than 500 pages this month. My top genres, I have literary, LGBTQIA+, romance, fantasy, and contemporary as my top genres. For format, 33% of the books I read were through ebook, 17%, which is only 2 books, was through audiobook, and 50% of the books I read were through print, which was 6 books that I read physically, which is amazing. My average star rating for February was 3.73. And that is still, I think, a pretty good average considering that I had no 5 stars, because that means I was still reading good books. Even though none of them were, life-changing or anything, they were still good, solid books. I did find some flops. Yes, I did, and we'll get into it. But for the most part, I still think that's a pretty good average considering I only read 12 books, All right, now that we've gone through the stats, let's go through the books. The first book that I read in February was All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby. Now, I listened to this on audiobook, which was a fantastic audiobook, by the way. I read Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby last year, and I enjoyed his writing so much that I knew I wanted to read more of his backlist. I also believe this is getting adapted into a Netflix series soon, so I knew that because it was going to get adapted, I wanted to read this before it came out. In this book, we follow Titus, who is the first Black sheriff in Sharon County in Virginia. That already comes with so many complexities, being the first Black sheriff. At the beginning of this book, there is a school shooting at a high school. A former student ends up killing one of the teachers at that school, and this sets off a chain of events that unravels a deeper, darker conspiracy that's going on in the underbelly of this county that includes a lot of prominent figures in the community that are involved. There were some really, really tough scenes to read in this. S.A. Cosby does not hold your hand through any of the dark themes, racism, abuse. There's so much going on here. And he really doesn't shy away from the fact that it is very violent and it is very prominent and is real. A lot of these characters are flawed. Even Titus himself isn't the most perfect main character to follow. He definitely is dealing with a lot of his own demons, but at the end of the day, he took this job because he wanted to make things right and he wanted to do things the right way. And that in itself is so hard to do when the rest of the community does not want you to be in this role and is actively working against you and trying to kick you out of this position of power. And again, there were just a lot of gory and very horrific things that happen in this book. I will say that the writing in his books will always want you to keep going. You want to know what's going to happen next. You want to know what secret is going to be exposed next. You want to know more about these characters. You get invested in the story and the lives of these characters. I did rate this 3.5 stars. It was a good, solid book. I will say the reveal of the big bad guy at the end felt kind of out of left field. We were getting introduced to all these different characters, and in my head I was like, this is the guy that's doing it, this is the guy that's doing it, this is the guy in charge. No, that's not what happened at all. So I felt like it kind of came out of nowhere who the person ended up being that was behind everything, but I'm glad justice was served. I'm glad that we did find out who it was and that there was a conclusion to the story. Other than that, please check your trigger warnings. I still highly recommend S.A. Cosby's books. That was All the Sinners Bleed. The next book that I read in February was an arc for The Mashup by Lori Marie Myers. And this one was one of my most anticipated releases of the year because this book was written for millennials, okay? This book, if you're a millennial like me, this book was written for us because this book is about Ruby, who on her 35th birthday gets dumped by her boyfriend and ends up making a birthday wish for a different life or something different to happen to her. She falls and hits her head, and when she wakes up in a MASH game from 7th grade. Yeah, if you're a millennial, you've played the MASH game, you know what it is. Mansion, apartment, shack, house. Exactly. I remember playing that game when I was in elementary and middle school all the time, and I would plan out my future life. Spoiler alert, none of which happened. In Ruby's MASH game, she lives in a crazy ass house that has like a laser tag room, a beanbag room. She has a tank with 13 goldfish. She owns a roller rink. And her childhood dreams really came true in this alternative world, living in her MASH game. And according to the game, her husband, is supposed to be Penn, who is her brother's best friend. You guys, the aesthetics and the vibes of this book, Y2K perfection. The pop music that was referenced, the outfits that she wore, the Lisa Frank-esque house that she lives in. She has a flip phone. You guys, like, I was living out my Y2K dreams. It felt like I had opened a 17 magazine from 2004. That's what it felt like reading this book. I was living for it, okay? The vibes and the aesthetic of this book, perfection. Now the actual story, that's where the issue lies. Because there wasn't really a plot, to be honest. I mean, she gets thrust back into this MASH game, right? Into an alternative reality. And she's trying to get back to her real world. In the real world, she is, I think, a lawyer or something, or she is an accountant, but she has a very professional job. She has a stable career and she does everything by the book. In this alternative world, she owns a roller rink and her life is chaos, right? She's trying to get back to the real world, and her best friend think that the way that she is going to get back to the real world is by being together with Penn, because that's the only part of the MASH game that isn't a reality. They aren't actually together, but she thinks that if they do end up together, that will help her go back to the real world. There's no reason for them not to be together. Penn and Ruby are both single in this alternative world. They're attracted to each other. There is literally no reason for them not to be together. Her brother doesn't mind them getting together. I don't know. And then it's like, I'm not really sure what was the purpose, because I guess Ruby is on a self-discovery journey to realize that maybe she shouldn't do everything by the book. Maybe she should have fun. There just didn't feel like there was a reason for any of this. Like, I didn't learn anything new, and I didn't really take away anything from this book that was significant enough for me to be invested into the characters and what was going on, because there were no stakes at all. Truly. It felt like this was all just for vibes and the Y2K aesthetic than anything else. There wasn't, I mean, the romance was cute, I guess, but a bit predictable. Like, we know they're gonna end up together. I mean, she wakes up in the real world and realizes that she shouldn't be living her life so cookie cutter. And I guess that's it. I still rated it 3.5 stars because, you know, I was definitely like, this was my dream world, honestly. And there were moments between Ruby and Penn that I thought were really cute and swoon-worthy, but yeah, nothing going on in the plot, truly. I still think if you're a millennial or if you want some nostalgia for the early 2000s, this is the perfect book for you to take you back there. I still recommend it if you want that. Just know that this is definitely no plot, just vibes, for sure. So that was The Mashup. The next book that I read in February was Sunburn by Chloe Michelle Howarth. This is a book that I have been dying to read for the longest time because I heard nothing but incredible things about it. First of all, I hate this cover. I don't know what's going on with the green, the legs, it's weird. And the UK cover honestly isn't much better. So I'm at a loss there regardless. But anyway, this book takes place in the mid-1990s, which I love anything that takes place in the 90s, in a small town called Crossmore in Ireland. We follow Lucy, and she is, I think it's her senior year of high school. The way that high school is structured in the UK is very different than it is here, but I'm assuming that it is her junior or senior year of high school that most of this book is set in. And it's her coming of age story, figuring out her identity, her sexuality, realizing that she is having deep feelings for one of her really close girlfriends in their friend group. You know, she's at a trying age with her parents. She feels like her mom hates her. She feels like no one understands her. And there were so many moments in this book that I have felt myself at that age when I was young. Even though this takes place in the mid 90s in Ireland, I feel like there are a lot of universal experiences and moments that these teenagers go through that I think will resonate with everyone. The writing in this book, you guys, flawless, absolutely phenomenal. Look at these tabs. There were so many good quotes and good lines in this. I feel like this author captured the emotions that you feel deeply when you're at this age and everything feels like the end of the world. Being compared to everyone around you just hits so deeply when you don't know who you are and you don't know what you're doing. And again, you just feel like the whole world is against you. You're scared to be who you truly are. You want to fit in with everyone. And you do things and you make decisions that in hindsight were a mistake, but you did it with good intentions and you made them because you didn't know any better. And those decisions do affect Lucy and her friendships later down the road because you do follow them even after they graduate high school and they go into their early adulthood in their early 20s. And you see how all of this definitely affects her and the way that she looks at the world and her relationships with everyone that is still in her life even then. So emotional, so gutting. The amount of sapphic yearning in this, wow. Absolutely incredible book. I rated 4.5 stars. So incredible, you guys. You need to read this. I highly recommend it. That is Sunburn. The next two books that I'm going to mention, I am not going to go into too much detail in because I have an entire vlog dedicated to me reading these two books. I go in depth about them and my feelings and thoughts about them in the vlog. And that vlog was me reading books from 2016. Now, mistakes were made. If you watch that vlog, mistakes were made, okay? I think we need to leave 2016 where it was, but these are the two that I actually completed and enjoyed in that vlog. The first being Homegoing by Ya Jessie. This was phenomenal, okay? And I can't believe it took me this long to read it. I've been wanting to read this for years, and now that I finally have, I'm mad at myself that it took me this long to get to it. I rated this 4.5 stars. Believe the hype. This was incredible. This is a multi-generational family saga. It was emotional, it was devastating, it was heartbreaking. You feel like all 5 stages of grief in this book, but the characters felt so real and I loved reading about them and their stories. Definitely check out my vlog for more detailed thoughts, but this was, believe the hype on this one. This was good. The next book I read for that vlog was Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna Maguire. I rated this 4.25 stars. You guys, again, this is another book. I don't know why it took me so long to read. And it's not a long book at all. It's a pretty short book. And this honestly had everything that I love about fantasy. You follow a group of kids who live in this wayward home for children who have in their past gone through portals that take them to magical worlds and magical realms, and they live there for what feels like years in their time but only days in our world. They come back and they have to somehow acclimate to regular society again, and the school that they live in is run by a woman who experienced that before, so she knows what they're going through, and they go through therapy and classes to help them move on from this experience. And most of the kids still want to go back to that realm that they were living in because that's the place that they felt at home. They felt like they belonged in those worlds and that they have no place here in reality, in our world. I loved how creative and imaginative the different worlds that they lived in were. And this was also really dark and gruesome. And it was just so fascinating, so interesting. Like I said, very unique and unlike anything I'd read before in fantasy. And the only reason why it was 4.25 is because if this had been longer, if this was a full-length novel and not this short, it would have been a 5 stars for sure. I wanted to spend more time with these characters, more time in this world. I feel like there was more we could have explored with them. The ending felt like it cut short and abruptly, and it kind of broke me because I was like, wait, that's it? That's all we're gonna get? And I know there's more books in the series. I'm not going to read the rest of the series, honestly, because there's 11 books at this point and that's just not gonna happen. Still highly recommend it, 4.25 stars. This was such a fun fantasy and I really enjoyed it. That is Every Heart is a Doorway. Next, I read an arc for a book called Devil of the Deep by Valencia Jean-Francois. The reason why I requested this on NetGalley is because I read that it had pirates and mermaids, and it was a fantasy romance-esque type of book. You guys know me, I love anything that has to do with pirates and mermaids. That's right up my alley. So I was really excited for this. I rated it 3 stars. There were a few, okay, let me get into it. You follow Pearl, who is a young mermaid. I think she's 16, 17. Then you have Nena, who is a pirate captain, iconic. And then Lou, who is a lieutenant in the fleet. So you have these 3 different perspectives that are all coming from 3 different worlds, but their stories all collide and intertwine when they are thrust upon this adventure, and they uncover a conspiracy that is going on that is much more bigger than them, and it involves a lot of people in higher positions of power that are manipulating certain things that relate to them that have the power to change the world. The writing was good. The beginning hooked me. The beginning was so good. It started off really strong. But as we keep going, as we progressed further in the story, I felt like the pacing was off. It felt like we spent more time either on land or on a boat waiting for something to happen. We were just waiting for things to happen and waiting for things to build up into a huge event. And when there were action scenes, they were short and far and few between. I also felt like the characters were a bit wishy-washy. I didn't know their true motives. Anytime something happened, it would sway or change the way that they would act or their decisions. And it didn't feel like they really stood on business on anything. I thought that this was a standalone. I did not realize that this was the first book in a series. It does feel like this was a book that was a setup book. It felt like it was world building, it was introducing the characters, and it was setting up for something bigger, for more of the series. I didn't know that. So had I gone in knowing that it was the first book in a series, I probably would have expected something different, and I probably would have enjoyed it more. So that's my bad. Overall, I mean, I think the writing was really great. This is a debut novel, so I think the writing has a lot of potential, but it just wasn't my cup of tea, and I expected something different. So that's on me, okay? I don't want to deter you from still trying this book out. And I really loved, there was a lot of queer representation in this. There's a trans character, there are queer relationships in it. Loved that because we hardly see that in fantasy. So really appreciated that. I still think you guys should give this a try if anything that I mentioned interests you. So yeah, that's Devil of the Deep. Next in February, I read Comedic Timing by Upasna Barath. This is a book part of the 831 Stories publishing house. I'm sure you've seen these sort of checkered covers before. I'd never read anything by this publishing house. This was the first one that I read. The reason I picked it up was because I thought the summary sounded really interesting, and also it's blurbed by Kate Goldbeck, who's one of my favorite romance authors. She says that this is a raw depiction of romance and friendship featuring all the complexity of navigating sex and love as a bi woman. And that's exactly what this is. You follow Naina, who just turned 25. She left Chicago to move to New York. She has a new job. She's starting her career and basically figuring out life in her mid-20s in the big city. Through mutual friends, she meets David at a party. They form a really great connection, a true friendship. They have similar interests. They're creatives, and they are playing off ideas of each other, and they end up collaborating on projects together. They get physical. So it does turn physical, and to me, would I consider this a romance? Absolutely not. If you asked me, this was a situationship, and it continues to be a situationship. These two do not last past this book, and if they do, it is going to end. I do not believe that this is a romance, truly. And I can say that because now that I'm 32, I look back on this at Naina being 25 and the way that her relationship with David is, their interactions, their conversations, the way that they react to certain things. Been there. Been there. Been there. Situationship, babe. Situationship. And on top of that, Naina had just broken up with her ex-girlfriend and had never been attracted to men before. David is the first man that she's been attracted to, and this is her first time dating a man. So there's a lot of, again, figuring out her bisexuality and her attraction to David and what that means for her. She's figuring out her life. She's chaotic. She does not know at all how to regulate her emotions at this age. There were moments in this book that I felt like the author had ripped pages of my diary when I was chaotic and figuring out my life in my mid-20s and published it in this book. Truly. And so I resonated with so much of these characters because David is also older. He is in his early 30s, so closer to my age right now. And the way that he would handle situations with logic and reasoning and more understanding compared to the way Naina would react to situations very aggressively, emotionally, and impulsively. The author did a great job of portraying the way that different ages react in terms of their maturity level. She got that perfectly because how Naina reacted to certain things at that age, that was me when I was 25. How David reacted at his age in his 30s, how I react in my 30s. That I feel like the author got down perfectly. And again, there were just a lot of moments that I think the author captured well through Naina's actions and what she was going through that will resonate with a lot of people that feel like they're lost in their mid-20s and still trying to figure things out. Because of that, I don't feel like this was a romance at all. I know that for argument's sake, a romance means that there has to be a happy ending where they get together at the end, and that is what happens. However, I definitely do not think that these two are going to stay together for the rest of their life. Definitely a situationship, guys, for sure. But still really enjoyed it, and I had a good time. And again, there's so many things that resonated with me that I've been through my own life. So for that, I gave it 3.5 stars. I still recommend this if any of that interests you. So that is Comedic Timing. All right, next I read Maneater by Alexandra Tran. Let me just start off by saying that there are a bunch of books on my Kindle that I have downloaded over the years that have just been sitting in my library on my Kindle, rotting away. But I chose this one to read because it was pitched as a dark gothic fantasy with romantic elements in it. There's female rage. There is some mythology in it. And I thought, you know what, let me try it out. I want something different. And different this was. Yes, it was. Was it a good different? I don't think so. This book is written in 3 different parts in my mind, okay? The first third of this book is our main character, Odessa, living in her bumfuck out of nowhere hometown, and she gets plucked out of her home to become the consort for the prince of the kingdom. And over the span of a year, she becomes his favorite. Anytime that he requests company for a consort, it's always her. The Prince Gadriel is going to go on a trip to a neighboring kingdom to, I don't know, figure out an allyship or something like that. And he chooses a different consort to travel with him. Odessa takes this as the opportunity to escape. She does. She escapes. And then as she is escaping and trying to get away from this hostage situation she's been in the palace, we then move to the next part of the book, which is the middle third of the book. And I'm not kidding you, it's about 10 to 11 chapters of a flashback to Odessa and her first love, Kaz. We learn how they fell in love, and then he leaves her high and dry, breaks her heart. I'm not kidding you, after this long ass flashback that takes up a third of the book, never mentioned again. Okay, the last third of this book, we're like 65, 70% of the way through, we are introduced to another love interest who apparently she has had a long history with this entire time and has been in love with her for this entire time, but we're only now meeting you 70% of the way through the book. And I don't know how this is possible, but the author managed to include insta-love 70% of the way through the book. And then we're thrust into a plot with ancient magic, gods, goddesses, demigods, demigoddesses, mythology, like all of this fucking random magic that I'm like, what is going on? It felt like I read 3 different books in one long novel. I was so confused. Now, I will say that the writing of this book, really great. Otherwise, I wouldn't have continued, right? I wouldn't have put myself through all of this for nothing. The writing did keep me entertained. It kept me wanting to go on. I wanted to know what was going to happen to Odessa. I wanted to know what was going to occur and the secret behind her own hidden powers. I don't know. Towards the end of it, I was sitting with the book thinking, what am I reading? What is going on? None of this was cohesive, and none of it really connected in a way that made me understand how we got from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. Do you know what I mean? Like, we literally just went from her being a consort, a flashback, and then now present day, she is dealing with all this mythology and magic. Okay, okay. And the female rage, I didn't really get a lot of that. I really didn't. I didn't get any of that, actually. So yeah, I rated this 2.75 stars. I'm honestly tempted to bump it down to 2.5 now that I've talked about it and replayed everything going on with this book, because I don't know what was going on. I had no idea. That was Maneater. All right, the next book that I read was my first classic of 2026, and it was Pride and Prejudice. Finally, the only person in the world who has not read this book yet finally read it. I don't need to tell you guys what this book is about. You already know. I rated this 4.25 stars. Miss Austen. She was a comedic. She would have been on SNL. She would have been on SNL in the present day. This was hilarious. I truly was not expecting it to be this funny, but there were moments where I was cackling out loud. The woman was ahead of her time. Yes, she was. I loved all of the drama and the scandals going on. I loved the cast of characters that we followed. I loved Elizabeth's dad. He really stood on business when it came to her. I hated Elizabeth's mom. I wanted to strangle her at times. I loved Elizabeth as a character. I thought she was really prickly and stubborn, and she's the original Not Like Other Girls. She really is. Now, I will say, okay, is there more yearning in the movie that I missed? Because I feel like there wasn't a lot of yearning in this book. Everyone that I know that has read this, and all of the reviews that I've seen, and everyone that just talks about this book always emphasizes the amount of yearning that Mr. Darcy does in this book. And did I miss something? Because I felt like there were a handful of interactions and conversations between Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy. And don't get me wrong, the banter between them, top tier. The banter was it. But I felt like we went from a handful of interactions between them, and then midway through the book, all of a sudden he's confessing his love for her. And I was a bit confused because I thought there was going to be yearning in this. And I get this was written, back in the day. I was expecting more yearning, you guys. I was still rooting for them in the end, obviously, and I loved the romance together. I felt like they were perfect for each other. But I thought there was going to be more yearning. I really did. Maybe in the movie, I'll feel it more because I can actually see the gazes, the glances, the hands touching and all of that. But in the book, I didn't really feel it that much. I felt like we were more focused on everything else, all the events and the drama that was happening around Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy, than we were focused solely on their romance in this. I don't know, but I still really enjoyed it, and this definitely will not be the last that I read of Jane Austen. So that was Pride and Prejudice. You know what? Yeah, so I am about to give you guys whiplash because of the next book that I read right after Pride and Prejudice, because that book is Click by Brianna Michaels. This was a fun, steamy, hot romance, and it reminded me that I need to stop going for the contemporary, traditionally published romances because those have not been working out for me anymore. I need to go back to my roots. I need to go back to indie romances, self-published romances, because the trad pubs, they're not doing it for me. This was a book about Michaela, who her boyfriend had just dumped her, and she had scheduled to do a boudoir photo shoot for him. So she calls a photographer who is Carson, and he convinces her to keep the appointment. He says, just do it for yourself. Like, fuck him. Do this for yourself. Let yourself feel sexy for yourself. And I was like, you know what? Love. Yes, period. She says, okay, fine. So she keeps the appointment. The night before the appointment, she signs up for a dating app similar to Tinder and Hinge, but it is called Kink Link. And it is an app where you can match with people that have the same kinks as you. And she is curious about the primal kink. She really wants someone to help her explore the primal kink. And she matches with a profile user named Wolfbite. And she looks at his photo and she's like, wow, he's hot. And they match and they are conversing, and he says, I'm an expert or a pro at the primal kink. If you're interested in that, we can set something up. And the next day when she goes to the studio for the photo shoot, Carson is Wolfbite. So that's the guy that she matches with on Kink Link. And the story goes from there. All I have to say is that Carson We love a big boy with a big appetite that loves to eat. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. This was just a fun, steamy time. I could turn my brain off and just have a good time with it, you know? Again, I really need to get back to these romances because they're entertaining and there's something different, you know? They explore so much and there's still so much heart and depth in them. The best part about them is that they're a child-free by choice couple. So you guys know I love when my couples are child-free by choice. So yeah, I had a really good time with this. I rated it 3.5 stars, and that is Click. All right, the next book that I read, I listened to the audiobook of Bad Asians by Lillian Lee. This is a new release that came out this month. And this book, you guys, oh my God, I rated it 3.75 stars. But this book resonated with me on a personal, deep level because it is about these group of friends who all have immigrant parents from China. Just the amount of generational trauma and all of the pressures of living up to your parents' expectations and making their sacrifice of immigrating here worth it, and being best friends with people that you've known your whole life, but still feeling like you're competing and always compared against them to be better than everyone. Been there, lived that. I know people like that. I grew up with people like that. If you are a first generation or second generation Asian American, this is a lived experience. Like, you have been through what these characters have gone through. And I saw a lot of reviews on this about the characters being insufferable and unlikable and very flawed. And that is true, but it is because they are the sum of their experiences and the environment that they were raised in. They were raised to be competitive. They were raised to be the best. They were raised to succeed before anything else. There's a lot of familial guilt that they have to go through. There's a lot of internal struggle that they go through, you know, wanting to live their own life versus trying to make their parents happy. And I definitely feel that our generation is still trying to break through a lot of the stigmas that this book portrays within the Asian community, because there is still, you know, the older generation that does not believe in mental health. They don't believe in therapy. They still have a very Eastern culture way of thinking. Whereas, you know, we didn't grow up in the East. We grew up here in America, and the way that we see the world is very different than the way they do. And I see how these characters are struggling with those things. And yeah, I felt for them. I had a lot of empathy for them because I saw myself in them. I see a lot of my friends in them. I see family members in them. And I see a lot of the older people in my community in the parents of these characters. And so I think it is, you know, something that if you haven't really experienced it or been through it, it is hard to kind of have empathy or sympathy for these characters because they do act in they don't make the best decisions. They are constantly in survival mode is all I'm gonna say. It is a book that I read this month that really resonated with me and really made an impact on me because of my personal experience with it. Yeah, that is Bad Asians by Lillian Lee. The last book that I read in February, I'm not gonna go into too much detail about it because there was a whole book club discussion that I will link below that I co-hosted with Fats from Baby Back Books and her book club. I will also link that down below. And her channel, if you don't follow her, go subscribe to her because she's flawless. She's perfect. We co-hosted the book talk discussion about this book, and that is The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr. Now, I did not know that this was going to be devastating, tragic, heartbreaking, emotionally traumatizing. This takes place on a plantation. We follow Isaiah and Samuel, who are slaves at this plantation, and they live their lives in a barn, and they are in charge of all the animals and the upkeep. They are the central core of this story, but you follow the other characters, the other slaves on the plantation, and the family that owns the plantation as well, and how Isaiah and Samuel's relationship have a ripple effect on everyone else at the plantation. Throughout this book, there is a theme of resilience and these small resistances that these characters take to give themselves power, to take that power back. Yeah, this was... If you want to see more in-depth thoughts, we go through almost every chapter of the book in our discussion, so I will link that below so you can watch it. But this was heavy. This was heavy. The writing was really fantastic. There were so many incredible moments, really incredible quotes. This author also wrote women with such strength and resilience in this book, and that was really impactful to me. That was really powerful to me. So yeah, I really do highly recommend it, but just know that it is going to take you on a journey, and it is going to be heartbreaking if you decide to pick this book up. But I still highly recommend it. I will read whatever Robert Jones Jr. writes next because his writing, fantastic. This was a way to end the month. Yeah, this was a way to end the month. with this book, The Prophets. Those are all the books that I read in February. Let me know what you read in the month of February. If you found any really great books, any bad books, any books that you DNF'd, let me know so I can take them off my TBR. I'm really hoping that March is a better reading month. I'm feeling better and I'm in the mood to read a lot. So I hope that March is a better reading month than February. I'm hoping I can find some 5 stars in March because I've been really struggling to find 5 stars this year, guys. I'm always trying to find a 5-star, but like it's been tough. I don't know what's been going on with these books lately, but it's been tough. It's been tough. But yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.